Welcome to East Lansing City Council meeting. Before I open the meeting, we have several subjects that individuals want to comment on. If you have anything non-police related, please fill out one of the blue forms. If you want to speak individually to the police related or the flooding subjects, fill out a different form. I'm going to try to keep you in groups and go as we go through the process here of question asking. I would just ask, the comments will be held to 5 minutes, and I'll just ask that crosstalk and other things don't take place. Please respect the individuals who are at the podium and allow them to get their points across during their allotted 5-minute time period. If 5 minutes is not enough to kind of get your full thought across, feel free to email council with your comments if they don't fit into the 5-minute time frame. Next, we'll open the meeting. Opening Tuesday, September 6, 2022, East Lansing regular city council meeting. We'll begin with roll call.
Councilmember Babcock.
Present.
Councilmember Brookover. Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg.
Here.
Mayor Bacon.
Present. Next, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Can we, before we do that, can I suggest an amendment to excuse Councilmember Brookover?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We could probably just vote that through right now and get it out of the way. So I'll move to excuse Councilmember Brookover.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Now to the approval of the agenda. On the agenda, I'll come to you in a second.
Minutes.
Nope. Approval of agenda.
Minutes.
I didn't approve the agenda yet.
Oh, okay.
I didn't.
You didn't approve the agenda? Oh, we just approved the amendment to the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
You just moved a motion to excuse, but you did it as an amendment rather than just making a motion, but
Yeah.
approve the agenda.
Okay.
All right. Can I move the items first? Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. Moving item 3.8 on the consent agenda to item 4.4. And Councilperson Babcock, did you want your additional amendment or?
Yes, if I may, I'd like to move item 3.2 to item 4.5. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that.
For a motion on the agenda as amended.
I'll move that.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, item 1.3, approval of the minutes. Regular council session, August 16th, 2022.
So moved?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All written communication received by council are posted to the online agenda packet. If you do not see your item in the agenda packet, it probably did not make the cutoff for this agenda. Next up, item 2.1, communication from the audience. I'll begin with, I'll start with anything related to community development advisory. Gosh.
Good evening, council members. I'm Chuck Overby. I'm the vice chair of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission. I'm here tonight to ask that the Parks and Recreation Commission continue to be a member of the Community Development Advisory Committee. There was a motion at the last city council meeting to replace the Parks and Recreation representation on this committee with a representative from the Planning Commission. The stated reason for this action was potential bias on the part of the Parks and Recreation Commission and our representation on the committee. Members of the Block Grant Committee come from various city advisory commissions: housing, seniors, human rights, transportation, parks and recreation, the University Student Commission. I reviewed information and committee and meeting minutes online to see if I could identify any committee member, and not just my own Parks and Recreation, but any committee member expressed bias, and I could find none. By definition, each advisory commission member is appointed and expected to explain and advocate for projects and spending for their constituents. And I think we would expect each of them to do that. As an example of the Block Grant Committee fairness in their decision-making, or in their recommendation process, the Stoddard Park project was unanimously funded at $121,000 when the original request was $250,000. So the Parks and Recreation Commission member on this committee was more than willing to compromise and to reduce the funding request. There seems to be no implicit or explicit bias that influenced the funding recommendations. I looked really hard for this. The bias that does exist is what's best for the residents and city of East Lansing, and what will improve our quality of life in East Lansing on a day-to-day basis. I urge you to consider this and to support retaining Parks and Recreation as a member of the Block Grant Committee. Thank you.
Anyone else, community development? All right. Second subject, flooding. Feel free to approach.
Good evening, council members. My name is Lee Schoen. My wife and I own a home in East Lansing, just a couple blocks north of here. We are in the neighborhood that had resurfacing last summer, but was not included in the stormwater upgrades, so we're in that neighborhood. I'm here to talk to you tonight about two separate but kind of related incidences. Those being, number one, street flooding in our neighborhood, and number two, sewer backups in our immediate block. Ever since the street resurfacing last summer, there's a total of 5 stormwater intakes within 100 yards of our home. 3 of those stormwater intakes don't receive water during rain events. The remaining 2, which are unfortunately on our property, receive the vast majority of stormwater flows during rain events, to the point where stormwater is backing up over our road routinely to a depth of 6 to 8 inches around those stormwater drains. We believe this to be the result of just improper grading of the streets. My wife did share some photos just before this meeting. Sorry we didn't get those to you earlier, but we did share some photos documenting some of these stormwater floods. On a related note, our home's sewer discharges to the municipal sewer system between those 2 stormwater intakes. Our home currently has a backflow preventer installed. It was installed by the former owner. Over the last 3 years, we've had 2 backups that have actually forced their way up through the backflow preventer valve, despite those valves being maintained every 3 to 4 months. And much to my dismay, I called some plumbers in this area, and they said that's actually a pretty common occurrence. They said it's not worth upgrading the model that we have in our basement. Those backflow preventers are only designed to prevent a certain pressure from backing up into your home. Once those pressures are exceeded, it just continues its way up into your basement. that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, policing. I'll let you start. I'll go with Kath Edsel.
Good evening. I think all of you are aware that I am on the East Lansing Independent Police Oversight Commission. However, tonight I'm here solely as a community member, a member of a community that I love and sometimes hate, a community that has so much potential but often falls short, a community that sees itself as progressive except when it's not, a community that I envision could be on the cutting edge of police reform, of education reform, of anti-poverty measures, of anti-racism efforts, and yet there are often too many barriers between us and that utopia. So the question is, what's at stake? Do we as a community go along with an attorney general who, in an election year, made a very calculated decision, a decision she clearly assumed would quiet the reformists in her base? She exonerated the police. She refused to even mention race in her press release. She used the Willie Horton playbook to try and make us all think DeAnthony deserved the bullets that penetrated his body, potentially killing him or injuring him for life. But that alone wasn't enough. She labeled him an immediate and extreme threat. By her calculation, he deserved more, 25 years in prison more, life with multiple felony convictions more, all so she could justify his shooting because that was her best political calculation. We already know that the police have unmatched protections afforded to them from their union. Most recently, our police department attempted to discipline an officer for falsifying a police report. He went to arbitration, supported by his union, who called a city council member an anti-police propagandist, and the arbitrator reversed the police department decision. Police are protected through qualified immunity, which is a huge hurdle for those wronged by the police to attempt to seek relief. Police are protected by laws that tack on punishments if a crime is committed against an officer versus the same crime committed against a non-police officer. And police are protected by white people who have been conditioned for centuries to believe that police prevent crime and keep them safe from bad guys like 20-year-old DeAnthony Van Atten, or Mr. Gastidos, or Mr. Logan, or Mr. Nasir, or all the black drivers who are pulled over at 3 times their rate of existence in the greater Lansing area, or all the black residents and visitors who have forced use on them, again, at 3 times their existence. Because fear is a great motivator, and policing has honed its use for a very long time. So I question again, what's at stake? This police department is not protecting me, or my kids, or my neighbors. In fact, my 60-plus-year-old neighbor, a black man, in his own neighborhood, was accused by 2 East Lansing Police Department officers of breaking into cars when he was flagging cars down to park them for the game this weekend. If we can't discipline our officers, and the Attorney General won't, and I'm afraid that the LEPOC has little power to make change, and they are allowed to be openly critical of their bosses, you guys, why do we employ them? Is it worth the 50+% of our budget added on any potential settlements to have them in our own department? It is clear, based on the response to the April 25th 9/11 call, that the Mid-Michigan region is significantly over-policed. We've tried the end runs of adding social workers, of making bias calls a crime, of altering our disturbing the peace codes, of changing prosecutors, of additional DEI training that had to be made voluntary because the officers didn't like what they were being told. When do we say enough? When do we truly begin to reimagine policing? When do we get to the utopia? I believe what's at stake is the very soul of this community. Do we live up to the diversity we so desperately say we want by protecting them from the police? Or do we continue to believe in the white supremacy that is at the very core of policing that says it must protect us from them? Thank you.
You're up. Karen?
Hello, everyone. My name is Carrington Kelsey. I'm a member of Black Lives Matter Lansing. Specifically, you want to say something?
Give me the blue.
Okay, sorry, eye contact. All right, simply I want to say ELPD violated the ordinance simply by responding to a call. One call that criminalized a black life. We already know how these systems work when they come in contact with black lives every day. We have all the statistics, we have all the data, but guess what we don't have? Accountability. We say that we want to trust these elected officials and trust these systems, but when we come into the question of people existing while black shopping, right? We say we want to create these spaces where people are respected, loved, held, but what has been indicative by the actions of ELPD has shown us is this is how they value black lives. They value us in ways that dehumanize us. We have to live with this consequence every day of DeAnthony being almost murdered in the East Lansing parking lot with no regard for any of the other citizens there. If you agree with this decision, if you actively choose to do nothing, if you actively choose not to speak out, make a statement, say as the city council, we have the power to change systems, you are agreeing with these 7 felonies that he has to face. You're agreeing with the 1 misdemeanor that he has to face. You agree with the bullet that is in that man's body right now. I'm not here to yell or scream at you. I'm here to simply tell you that you need to do better. And if you haven't said something, you need to do better. If you haven't talked about the power that you have when it comes to budget, when it comes into consequences of policing, when it comes to how the budget is designed, whether you approve these things, you are telling me that you do not care about black lives. And you are saying that about every black life that exists here in East Lansing. We know how these systems exist. I'm not here begging you to do anything. I'm simply asking you to be a human being and step up to the charge at hand. I need clear-cut decisions showing how you will not let ELPD get away with this. You will call for accountability. Better processes that include the people who are directly affected every day. You want to say that defunding the police is a terrible thing, but guess what? When they have qualified immunity, when they have all these systems built to protect them every day, this is the response that we get when we see how they treat our lives. Dana Nessel lied to the community. She virtue signaled every way. But guess what's still happening? 7 felonies, 1 misdemeanor, and a bullet in this man's body when he was clearly not a threat. He was faced away from these officers. And magically, after 6 months of hearing nothing, right, we get these corroborated stories with no clarity. So guess what? You are the people in the room who have power. And by you actively choosing not to invoke that power, speak against these systems, talking about how do we change these things collectively, you are agreeing by omission. I know y'all expected BLM to come here and scream and yell at you. I know y'all expected us to be everything that you deem us to be, right? Preconceived notions, but what we are saying clearly that there is a broken system here that is aided and abetted by every other system in East Lansing. And no one is choosing, no one with actual political power, as you like to say a lot of times, is choosing to right these wrongs, is choosing to stand with the family of DeAnthony Van Atten. Right now, these blank stares are indicative of how we get nothing when we come to these meetings. And for once, give me a structure that I can believe in. Give me a chance to say that I may want to raise a child in East Lansing without the fear of them being murdered. Give me a chance to go to Meyer without feeling like I may be attacked by simply existing in the skin that I was born with. You know how police criminalize blackness. And you know how these statistics work. You didn't get these degrees by magic, right? You actually sat down and studied these things. So I'm telling you simply, study these systems, dismantle them step by step, hold them accountable. And if you choose to do nothing, you choose every bullet that was in DeAnthony Van Atten's body. Justice for Van Atten family. Justice for DeAnthony Van Atten.
30 seconds remaining.
My name is Karen Honey. I'm a lifelong resident of East Lansing and a commissioner on the Human Rights Commission, but my comments tonight reflect my own views. I'm very sad and disappointed to be here tonight speaking on this topic. I'm going to start my comments by making a few requests. First and most importantly, I am asking that the East Lansing City Council formally request that the State Attorney General, Dana Nessel, drop all charges against DeAnthony Van Atten, the young man that was shot twice by the East Lansing Police Department while running away in the Meyer parking lot. I am furthermore asking that a complete and thorough investigation take place, starting with a 9/11 call that may or may not have violated East Lansing Ordinance 1490, which prohibits calling the police based on racial motives rather than criminal misconduct. I would like a thorough investigation of every subsequent step that resulted in ELPD officers firing multiple rounds into a crowded parking lot at a fleeing young man, which resulted in him being hospitalized for 2 gunshot wounds. At the time that the police officers chose to enter Myers with their guns at the ready, then chase down and shoot a young man who was observed to be checking out and paying for his groceries, no criminal activity had been observed. Michigan is an open carry state, and it is also legal in Michigan to carry a concealed weapon if you have the proper permit. At the time that DeAnthony was pursued and shot, it was unclear whether or not he was legally carrying a firearm. This 20-year-old young man, DeAnthony Van Atten, after being shot by your local police department, was then charged with 8 counts, 7 felonies, and a misdemeanor, and he now faces upward of 20 years in prison, as well as a lifelong criminal record. 20 years. That's the same number of years that he's been alive. He did not point his gun at anyone. He did not threaten anyone. He caused no bodily harm to anyone. While I understand that the City Council cannot control the actions of our Attorney General, were I in your position, my conscience would mandate that I do everything in my power to advocate on behalf of this young man. A young man who made mistakes, a young man who made a poor choice, a young man who was shot twice by our police department. DeAnthony needs help and support to turn his life around. He does not deserve to be locked in a cage for the next 20 years of his life. If we do not do everything in our power to intervene and advocate for this young man, we are complicit in basically throwing him away. DeAnthony is a human being whose life has value. He is a child, he has a mother, he has siblings and aunts and uncles that love him. His life matters. We must do better. 6 years ago, right here at the Hannah Community Center, I participated in a community conversation on racial profiling by the East Lansing Police Department. My neighbor Jeffrey Ray was on the panel. Darrell Slaughter was on the panel. Numerous Black residents and guests talked about their experiences being racially profiled by the East Lansing Police Department. At that time, Chief Jeff Murphy and Sergeant James Campbell, 2 representatives from the ELPD, said they heard everything the community had said and hoped to fix the issues moving forward. This weekend, I was talking to my neighbor of 20 years, I live in the same neighborhood as Kath, who has lived down the block from me for 20 years. The father told me how he had been profiled and harassed by an ELPD officer while selling parking spots in his driveway during the football game, something he and many of my neighbors, including myself, have done for years. Somebody had complained about a black man trying to break into cars. The police investigated, and I guess any old black man will do. My neighbor was falsely accused and asked for his driver's license. He had done nothing wrong. Then his son, a young man in his 20s, roughly the same age as my own son, told me a story about an East Lansing police officer who had intentionally shoulder-checked him while he was hanging out downtown with his friends, knocking him off balance, and then told him, "You smell like weed." He replied that not only was marijuana legal in Michigan, but that he had his medical card. He told this officer, "You can't harass me for that," and the officer replied, "I can do whatever I want. I'm a police officer, and you smell like weed." Father and son racially profiled in 2 separate occasions, a family affair. Nothing has changed. Nothing has gotten better. I want to live in a city that I can be proud of, a city that is safe and welcoming to residents and guests, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or social class. You as the governing body with oversight over your police department must do better. I know each of you as individuals. I know you to be good people who are committed to justice and equity. It's time to stop talking and to start acting. DeAnthony's life has value. His life matters. Please use whatever influence that you have to intervene and advocate on his behalf. Let's not throw this young man away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Norma Bauer. I speak as a member of the Allies and Leaders for Police and Community Trust, otherwise known as the ALPACT. With all due respect for concerned citizens who will urge you to do the quick fix and hire these police officers who were involved in that incident, I urge you to vote to delay that particular response. Give these officers time to see if they want to volunteer to take a training that offers real hope to help future situations and what may have caused this one. Until recently, police deal with a crisis that laws, policies, practices, procedures, and norms in their police department teach them. These include a bulletproof vest, handcuffs, batons, tasers, pistols, and advice from senior officers. To ensure the safety of all, they learn to take control of the situation, urge bystanders to back off, use distraction technique to get an individual into the squad car so jail staff can handle it. If that doesn't work, throw the person to the ground, handcuff them behind their back, or use a chokehold to temporarily disable them. This doesn't work to de-escalate the situation. In fact, it traumatizes the individual in crisis, onlookers, including loved ones who record the situation, and police, because such evidence can traumatize the community and ruin a chance for police to defend themselves in arbitration or a fair lawsuit. The good news is that now over 400 local first responders have taken training developed by police, working with community activists to keep everyone safe. Police, and I can't find it, bystanders, and darn. This has been developed in Memphis by police working with community activists. And it teaches them active listening and empathy, which are so needed by persons who are in crisis. They're working with public health officials, including community mental health. Police need to learn these things, and they're very excited to learn it. They're very pleased. In fact, 2 local police officers took a training to become certified crisis intervention trainers. They've joined and created a local crisis intervention team to teach it to other police officers. It's my hope that this will be enough to get these officers who are involved in the incident to take the training, and maybe they'll get excited about it and they'll join. And they'll tell other officers at the East Lansing Police Department how it works and how well it works, because people in crisis need treatment, not incarceration. So I'm sorry that I can't tell you my brilliant thing, but I'll send it to you in an email. So I didn't go over my time, and I'll yield my time to any of those who have other thoughts that they want to put forth. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ash. I've been a resident of this city for about a decade now. And the facts are that a few police officers in the
Ashley.
city.
It's me.
Huh?
State,
Yeah.
state your full name.
Ash Meadow. Yeah. So several police officers in this area got a single call from a single white woman, and then decided that because the man that she was targeting ran for his life, that he deserved to die. That's what happened. And now they're just gonna get their jobs back? Like, that's okay? It's not. I want justice for D'Anthony Van, and I want it as quickly as possible, and I support the much more eloquent words of much of the people who came before me. So, thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Good evening, Farhan Shikumar. This is what I was trying to prevent when the Casito incident happened 2 years ago. Casito was beat up by East Lansing police officers, and the officer who beat up Casito had made up 41% of all public complaints in 2 years. Andrew Stevenson. That was his name. 42% of all public complaints, one officer. The same thing is happening again. The fact of the matter is, D'Anthony never pointed his gun at your officers. In fact, when he got shot and they came to provide him aid and they searched him, he didn't have a gun. So at what point did your officers felt that their life was threatened? Are their lives more important than D'Anthony's? At what point did they feel threatened? He didn't have a gun on him when they shot him. and they shot 11 shots. 2 hit him. Where did the rest of them go? Is that a normal practice in East Lansing, where you can just have a shootout in a parking lot? You could have had 9 extra bodies, 9 innocent bystanders dead in this city. What would you guys have told them? What would you have told 9 grieving families, Mr. Chief? You just can't just have a shootout in the middle of the day. There has to be accountability. That can't be part of your practice. It's not. It's not. And for us to just turn the page and act like nothing happened, that's the problem in this city. It has been a problem, and it will continue to be a problem because it never gets addressed. We just turn the page. New mayor, same stuff. New chief, same stuff. More trainings, same stuff. More funding, same stuff. There needs to be a structural change in this police department. D. Anthony is lucky to be alive. Your police officers didn't do him a favor. They fired 11 shots, all meant to hit him. All of them were meant to hit him. Or they were meant to hit innocent bystanders. We can't have that kind of practice in this city. It's unacceptable. And for me to come here every single time and tell you guys the same thing, whether it was Casito, whether it was Najim Nasir, whether it was Anthony Logans Jr., there's a problem in this city. Your police officers racially profile black people. This city, this police department has shown hostility to black people. It's a fact. The numbers show it. The only year where your police officers did not racially profile black people was when COVID happened. A pandemic, that's what it took. A deadly virus for your police officers to stop harassing black people. It's sad. Black people only make up 7%, 8%. But then when you look at the traffic stops, they made up 50%, 45%. Come on. Numbers don't lie. These are your numbers. They're y'all numbers. Y'all release them every time. But then y'all don't look at them. Y'all don't review them. Y'all don't take any changes. Y'all don't make any changes. What's the point of keeping record if you're not going to make any changes? Come on, man. More lives are at stake. More lives are at stake. More people are going to die in this city. More black people. Young black people like D. Anthony, who almost lost his life over because someone called because he was carrying a gun. It's an open state carry. So what if he was carrying a gun? Since when did that become a crime? I see it every day. People carrying guns into stores, whether it's Meijer or Walmart. Nobody calls the police.
30 seconds remaining.
Come on, man. Do better. Do better. This community expects more from you guys. East Lansing is a beautiful city. It has great community. I know it. They have protested with me. They have walked these streets with me. Do better. We expect better. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I left my paper here. I'm Jean Fedewa. I am DeAnthony's great aunt. I'm just speechless that it continued, with Dana Nessel's proclamation and the state police's findings are so far off of what the actual happenings were. And I think it just shows the colonial attitudes that prevail in government and in policing. It has just continued on after generation, that people are not allowed to be in charge of their own lives and raise their children in a safe environment and allow them to be themselves. In the 1920s, my grandmother abruptly lost her parents to death, and she was to stay with her grandparents. Only the courts found the home unfit because the woman in the home, they didn't even call her my grandfather's wife, was Native American, and she was removed. And it's like, what kind of shadow puts on that? I've seen it through my family, the alcoholism, the division. You know, my grandmother coped the best she could, but I think it wreaked havoc on her family. And how far is that going to go down, and when are we going to reverse that so people and families can heal and walk safely in our country and on our cities? And I really feel that East Lansing is a place that can really make some changes and be a shining light. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, how's it going? My name is Mike Toole. I'm a resident of East Lansing. And thank you for sharing all your stories. I was speechless when I saw with my own eyes East Lansing police officers shoot at a fleeing unarmed black man in a crowded Meyer parking lot. I was just astounded. I had a conversation with my teenage daughter who goes to school here, and I assured her that there would be accountability, and we could see it with our own eyes. I'm standing corrected. The Attorney General lies to help this person, or these people, that whatever. But you as a body can do something else, and I implore you to do something. Please don't hire these officers back. It will traumatize me. It will traumatize my family. I can't imagine what it would do to black people who live in this community. It is a shame and a dishonor. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
The good news is that now 400 local first responders have taken training developed by police working with community activists to keep everyone safe. Trainees become enthusiastic supporters. As Chief Johnson learned, 2 experienced Capital Area Police have volunteered to join a crisis intervention team and become certified to train other police to assess what caused a 911 call. They work with mental health providers and disability rights volunteers to offer help to assess and defuse a crisis. As one result, police learn to calm themselves so they can respond confidently, rationally, and with great care when there's a person in crisis. Using empathy and active listening, they find that treatment for mental illness is a more effective long-term solution than jail. Police who apply these tools find that calls from so-called problem people have gone down. A local police academy has added human communication skills to its curriculum. So please delay a decision to fire these officers so they can discern if volunteering to take this CIT training is for them. The cost is just $25 for a manual that lists all the tools that are offered. And if concerned citizens want to help, they can volunteer to act as a person in crisis during the training. At the end of the training, it's scenario-based. And this gives us a chance to work together as a community to keep everyone safe. That's the most important goal. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Joy Gleason. I am a member of the community at large, and I waited until it seemed close to the end of all the other speakers to hear what they had to say. You've already heard hard statistics, heartfelt stories, and you've seen the video. You already know that all of you need to be ashamed of yourselves if you take these officers back into the fold and allow them to be predators on the streets of East Lansing. However, what I didn't hear in the vast majority of people who came to speak is someone who spoke on the behalf of the attempted murderers, on the behalf of wanting to have racial profiling in the community. Someone to step up and say, I'm glad that there is racial oppression in East Lansing. And the reason we're not hearing that is because those people are already safe. The system already covers them, protects them, and gives them what they want. They don't have to come forward and say anything. They already have racial oppression hard at work in East Lansing. They already have murderous police officers in the ranks to take out the people that they don't want in their community. So you're not hearing that side of it because they don't need to come forward and speak. But the people who are speaking to you now fear for their lives and their way of life. As it's already been presented to you, you have the power and the opportunity to make a change, to make East Lansing different, to make East Lansing a leader in the change that we need, not only in this community, but in our country. It's very easy to maintain the status quo. It's very easy to say that there should be some sort of incrementalism, and can't we just wait for one more learning session? Can't we just wait for enlightenment to come to the racists? We've waited long enough. Now is the time to make a decision that will be impactful not only here, but across the nation. Because 3 blocks to the south of here, there is a large campus full of hopeful young students that their parents have sent here believing that they will be safe, and not knowing that there are murderous police officers that are preying upon their children when they walk in the streets of East Lansing, that will throw them down to the ground with callous disregard, whether they're in front of the 7-Eleven, whether they're shopping at Meyer, or whether they're just minding their own business. That would be a national story too. So think carefully about what the image you want of East Lansing to be when the nation's cameras come calling again. Is this the community that's on the forefront of the answer, or just another community in division? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If no further comment, I'm going to close public comment.
Hi, my name is Charity Van Atten. I am an East Lansing resident. I am DeAnthony Van Atten's aunt. I was really hoping that this situation would be different, that we wouldn't be all meeting like this again. I don't really know what to say because, to be honest, I'm shocked, I'm appalled, and I'm heartbroken. I have young Black children myself, and up until this situation, I always thought that, given the right opportunity, the right situation, that anybody and everybody could be held accountable for their own actions. And I don't see that happening here. I myself, as a citizen in East Lansing, every time I see a police officer, could be one of your guys' greatest, who is loved by everybody, who does no wrong and is fantastic. But I practically have a panic attack every time I see a cop car enter my apartment complex. And up until this situation, every time I used to see them, I was always excited because they would get out and play with the children. I had nothing but positive things to say. But now I see them and I almost have a panic attack because I don't think that you guys hold them accountable. And anything we can see that they are not going to do the least, handle it, I don't even know how to say it, but with the least force imaginable. They shot my nephew running away. He wasn't trying to shoot them. He wasn't trying to shoot any of the bystanders. He was trying to run away, and obviously when he knew he wasn't going to, he disposed of his gun so that he did not have it on him, so with hopes that he wouldn't get shot. And then they shot him anyway. Who wasn't a threat to them, who wasn't a threat to anybody else. I'm so disappointed. I'm disappointed in society because I'm on social media. I see the horrible, horrible things people say. And you guys are reinforcing those horrible things because you guys could make a change. You guys could show that that's not okay. And you guys could hold them accountable because what they did is not okay. And I'm sorry, what was your name? I get what you're saying about training, but what you're saying is let them make the choice to go to these trainings because maybe it'll make a difference for them. And maybe it will, but it's not going to make a difference for our community. If they are reinstated, our community is going to hurt.
It's volunteer.
Exactly, it's volunteer. And if they don't, and they're hired back in, they learn nothing but that it's okay.
It has not had that effect on other police officers.
Because those police officers volunteered to take the training. I'm saying these police officers, it's volunteer for them to take it. What if they don't take it? And then they're back on their streets, not learning nothing. But it's okay for them to shoot and ask questions later. I appreciate your positivity. I never once ever thought that all cops were bad. I still don't think all cops are bad. But I don't think it's okay that they could volunteer for some additional training that may make a difference because they don't have to volunteer. And what did they learn? That they can do whatever they want, and that's okay. And me, as not only an aunt, but a member of this community, does not find that okay. And I really hope that you guys can look deep inside your guys' self and decide to be the change, because it has to start somewhere, and I really hope it's with you guys.
Online queue.
We do have some callers. Okay, caller by the name of Roger, if you're welcome to address the City Council now.
Tammy,
Yes.
can you go to Adam? He's
Yes.
pressed for time.
I'm sorry, can you identify yourself?
Yes, this is Adam Delay.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
Hey, thank you. So good evening, council members. This is Adam Delay. My topic pales in comparison, I think, to the main topic of the night, but I am commenting tonight in my capacity as chair of the city's Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission. During the last council meeting, a motion was made to remove the Parks and Rec Commission seat from the CDBG Advisory Board due to what was called a potential conflict of interest. I'd like to voice my opposition to this proposal, as well as share the concerns of myself and several of the Commission's members. The current CDBG Board is made up of various boards and commission members within the city, many of which are tied to one of the explicit uses of CDBG funding. So, for example, infrastructure, housing, parks, and more. So we therefore logically have members from committees such as Human Rights, Transportation, Housing, and yes, Parks and Recreation. I believe this is a good setup that allows input from those city boards that are involved in these issues. So while I understand certain council members' views that Parks and Recreation projects advocated by our member on the board go directly to the city's Parks and Recreation Department as opposed to a nonprofit, I don't think it's right to call this a conflict of interest. It's not true that is it not true that the various nonprofits that benefit from CDBG funds have connections to and relationships with those other commissions that share their goals and values on the board? So are we to assume that, for example, there's no potential bias in having a housing commissioner on the board who may advocate for funding to a housing services nonprofit that they have worked with through their own commission? So to me, advocacy and balancing of needs, compromising consensus, that's the point of that board. So if you have a committee made up of stakeholders, each member is going to have a stake or their own perspective to share. Lastly, I wanted to share that myself and several other members of the Parks Commission are concerned that this motion was made without the opportunity for us to be previously informed about it. I feel that we would have had, I feel it would have been considered courteous, professional, proper for our commission to have the opportunity to discuss this issue beforehand and have the chance to discuss it at one of our meetings. So in closing, I do not believe the commission's presence on the CDBG board is in any way of conflict of interest, but rather fulfills the very purpose of the board. It is unclear to me why this decision is being considered, and if the Planning Commission has even been made aware of this proposal, as they're the ones who are talked about being the substitute. Furthermore, to eliminate a commission that represents one of the explicit uses of potential CDBG funds while including the others is simply unfair. So I request that you not move forward with this idea, and I would appreciate your attention to that. With the time that I have left, I do feel compelled to take off my chair of the commission hat. So everything I'm about to say now is not in any way related to that role. But I did just want to say that to all the other speakers that spoke tonight, I very much agree with the sentiment that they laid forward. My concern is that, and I think I've seen this before from the council, is that there's going to be this feeling that we're not going to explicitly state how we feel about it as council members, because in some way there's this view that, like, well, we represent the city, there's an ongoing investigation, et cetera, et cetera. You are under no such lock and key. If you feel these officers should not return or should be terminated, you have every right to say that. You do not have to say what you usually say, which is, well, we only hire the city manager and the city attorney. You have every right to say how you feel about these issues. My chief concern is that what will happen is when the Oversight Commission, the police department will issue a report hearing the officers, the Oversight Commission will appeal, chief will uphold, the Oversight Commission will appeal again to the city manager, and he will uphold it, and then we're just kind of be stuck there, and there's going to be no real further advocacy on the issue. And I've seen that time and again. I mean, when I ran for council last year, I explicitly ran, one of my planks was to close the city jail, and during that process, I had not one but two of you tell me to my face, yes, we agree with you, the city jail should be closed, and I know for a fact that there is at least a third or fourth one of you that agrees with that, but it hasn't happened. Why doesn't it? If a majority of you agree this is something we should do,
30
let's make
seconds
it happen.
remaining.
And so I think that so often what I ask for you is to take explicit action. Say how you feel. Go on Facebook tonight and say, I agree with the speakers. Don't hesitate. Don't feel like you have to be a steward of the city or that you have to walk a fine line or be impartial. You don't. You represent the community, so say how you feel. And that is all. Thank you.
Caller with the number ending in 954, you're welcome to address City Council.
I think I'm unmuted. Hello, this is Nicole Biber. I'm a resident of the city of East Lansing. I just listening to all of the speakers, and a few things stood out to me. This notion of training officers, this voluntary training, seems like the officers that did this had their chance to take that training and didn't do it. There's a reason they didn't do it. So now we're going to say, oh, after you did something that endangered so many people, and of course, shot someone in the back as they were fleeing, oh, now you can take it if you want. Just talk about responding to crisis. What was the crisis? There seemed to be a big crisis until they showed up, guns drawn and shooting. I don't like seeing weapons, right? So when I see them around in public spaces, I definitely prefer not to. But the laws say they can be there. I don't call up the police and say, there's someone with a weapon. I don't like the law. Why'd this person call? We know why. Why was the response this assumption that it's this huge emergency? You know, like going to the Capitol to protest these things. I always see people showing up with their weapons. No one's going up to them and saying, get out of here. You're making people uncomfortable. So this notion that they can just come back, why? They weren't protecting the community. I would have been terrified to be there. It's outrageous. Suddenly they're going to have this great judgment in the middle of the day. They're shooting. They didn't know anything about the licensing of that gun. Well, they knew it was, well, I assume they know it's permitted to carry a weapon, as I say to me, unfortunately. Oh, and they knew someone called in and said a young black man has a weapon. And so that becomes, in the mind, a crisis. They created the crisis. They didn't do their job. I thought that job was supposed to be protect and to serve. I sure don't feel protected knowing there'd be officers around, always with their guns on, deciding they can just shoot no matter where they are. What is that? I remember a few years ago driving around just through the campus, come upon about, I think it'd be 5 or 6 cop cars, one young black man on a scooter. They're all up there on him. We slowed way down, and I was looking out the windows like, I was sad. I was like, what's going on? They're like, you get out of here. And I looked in the young man's eyes. Just like, I'm so sorry, honey. And we went around the corner. It was all cleared up then. We wouldn't have known it. It had just been a minute later, just another day, just another night, right? That's not okay. They could have chosen to take that training a long time ago. They didn't. There's a reason why. They're untrustworthy. Accountability means they don't get that job back. And people there, they need to show that they can do the job. Figure it out. Make sure we're all staying safe by them not going around and terrorizing people. That's all.
Thank you.
There are no other callers in the queue.
Thank you. Communication from council. Councilperson Babcock.
Pass.
Councilperson Watson.
I have something that I prepared that I'm going to read out loud. I am co-counsel liaison for the Independent Police Oversight Commission. And I've felt like I was doing the work there, so I haven't talked about a lot when we've been here at our city council meetings. After Attorney Nestle's remarks came out, and I had some additional conversations with some of the commissioners, I felt like I would be remiss if I didn't say anything today to people. My angle's a little different. It has more to do with Independent Police Oversight Commission, but I'm going to begin with some facts in time. In 2020, a study committee was formed to explore an independent police oversight commission for our city. They met into 2021, and then around late 2021, a few council members and other people interviewed people for the Independent Police Oversight Commission. This committee, I believe, met for the first time December of 2020. And here's the purpose of our Independent Police Oversight Commission. The purpose of this commission is to increase accountability of the East Lansing Police Department and to strengthen conditions leading to trust in the police department by the community that it is pledged to serve. Because the City Council is committed to the goal of racial equity, the Commission will give priority to addressing racial inequities as well as use of force in policing. There's more, but this can be found in section 2.472. So there was plenty to discuss when the Independent Police Oversight Commission began their meetings, including racial inequities in policing, our procedures, and our complaint process. Then, April of 2022, to our city's collective horror and sadness, a young black man was shot in a crowded Meijer parking lot. Shots were fired several times as he ran away. He was hit twice. The young man had not held up the Meijer store. Most of the food was checked out, and we don't shoot people because they don't check their corn out or their produce. That's not our process. And if it is, it has to be looked at. Back to my reading. The young man came to the Meijer store with a baby and his mom, which makes a very odd getaway car. Our Police Oversight Commission intentionally represents facets of our community. They represent different angles. Our oversight's work, in my opinion, did not stop, nor did it start as it did with the East Lansing Police Department with Attorney Nessel's decisions. A pointed letter about oversight was released. I know that dues-paying members can have their representatives generate letters on their behalf, but there are dangers when we tell a single story. There's a term we use in equity spaces, and it's called tone policing. And a definition is a tactic that dismisses the ideas being communicated when they are perceived to be delivered in an angry, frustrated, sad, fearful, or otherwise emotionally charged manner. None of our commissions should be tone policed, especially our Independent Police Oversight Commission. And the last thing I wanted to say, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I just want to remind everyone that our Independent Police Oversight Commission represents voices in our community. They advocate from a community perspective. So yeah, we can get a decision from Attorney Nessel on a policy and what was followed, and then these up charges, but that doesn't mean that our Police Oversight Commission should rest, because we represent the community, and the community was saddened, and we are horrified, and we don't believe that this is going to stop. And so I believe in the presence of our Police Oversight Commission. I came from the Human Relations Commission, Human Rights Commission, when the first of the year, the chief would show up and tell us this data, scattered data on who was pulled over and who wasn't and what complaints happened. And we fought and decided we needed a deeper process, we needed a better process. And so then our study committee was formed, and then our Independent Police Oversight Commission was formed. And we are just beginning, and I believe in the thought processes and the recommendations that are going to be coming to council from East Lansing Police Oversight Commission. And I just appreciate the extra work that they're doing so that we can hopefully, I can drive change with majority votes on City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thanks. I have just a short addendum to Councilmember Watson's very poignant comments. I think that the findings that we saw coming out of the Attorney General's office come from a place that asks the question, were our police officers' actions justified by our policies and their own training? And I think that we, as a local body, have an opportunity to ask ourselves a different question, which is, if our policies result in an outcome that we find unacceptable, how can we change our policies and training to make sure that that unacceptable outcome doesn't happen again? And I think that that work is happening on this council. It's happening within our department. It's happening slowly because we're undoing centuries of policing that was definitely a more military and confrontational style. And although I would like to see it happen more quickly myself, I do understand what we're up against. But I do think that we can ask ourselves the question, how can we do it better? Rather than how can we justify the actions that our community and this body find unacceptable.
I'll give a formal statement, then I'll give my opinion statement. Just to know, we're committed to independent police oversight. We'll continue to work to build trust and transparency in our public service operations. We'll continue to build upon the work of doing community policing. We'll continue to work as city leaders on our policing models, focus, and inclusive living in East Lansing. And we will not squander this opportunity to come out of this crisis more grounded in our core principles. So that's my formal opinion. My literal reaction, and my deepest concern is from policing, from the community, or anyone else, regardless of this outcome, that any parties come away patting themselves on the back or feeling vindicated or in any way good about the outcome of the situation. From the original incident, I lived just north of the Meyer, and was rendered in shock and felt all the trauma and everything else that comes with that. And the decision, regardless of how you feel about the outcome, if you don't turn around and feel that same trauma, something's probably wrong with you. It's traumatic. You can take 10 different things from the situation and find something to feel terribly sad about, from the individual, from the kind of intersectionality of how this stuff even happens, and how even the path of this individual to this, which is all tied to kind of the societal things and obviously bad choices of a young man and so on. When I see the degree of the charges that came out, I know, from that position, I've seen individuals, and I know that's a process of representations. I'm friends with every lawyer, individual, and everyone in here with proper representation. I've never seen anyone hit with a bundle of charges at that level, and that's a matter of representation, and that comes down to degrees of that unto itself has degrees of racism wrapped into it. Because with proper representation, you don't get hit with that bundle of charges in that order. Because the right attorney makes all that stuff go away. So that was my first thought. That's the intersection that I sit in, dealing with young men just like this every day. Very traumatic. I think as soon as the decision comes out, I don't think I slept for 2 days. So regardless, the only piece that I get from this is that all these individuals are alive. It's the only piece in this. There is no great takeaway, no great victory. So, any individuals that's from the side of the police department, anybody in the community feeling like something great happened, and I'll tell anybody, the intersectionality only lasts for so long. As we've seen these things grow, the prevalence of guns and these other things now being commonplace, how do you actually keep anyone safe? Now you're having to make biased selections because guns are everywhere. So now we're at that intersection of gun ownership and all this other stuff that people fought for. Now they don't even know how to manage the thing that many people fought for, to have guns everywhere. Well, they're everywhere. How are you going to manage it now? And is it going to be by race? Is it going to be by who you think should have a gun? We're in a tough spot here. But just frankly, to the family, to everyone involved, it's created a great degree of pain for many people in this community, and don't feel like I think sometimes explicitly, and I know this from the community explicitly want to go, this is for that. Myself and many of the council people, there is a good fight taking place. I hate that this individual's life had to be risked to test these processes and our systems, but there's no individual can walk away and say that there wasn't a systems failure that day. I went straight to kind of visual evidence looking at, and I know law enforcement follows this stuff, a similar incident in Denver with 5 individuals shot in a downtown for an individual down there. How would law enforcement or anyone else turn around and justify that outcome? And that outcome was out there. So, and then what are we talking about here today? So the ability even to criminalize the individual and all those things are fine. And I think anyone of any ilk knows that is sometimes part of the playbook, if not a lot of times. But the reality of the situation of that day is this could have been catastrophic. And the only positive is that individuals alive today from the situation. So anyone who is not working on processes, planning for the future, the ecosystem's still in place, and individuals address this today, this could repeat itself at any time if we don't do the proper things with our systems. And the overall, we can't solve every problem within the ecosystem, but we're one system here as a community. So no, the work will continue here with council. You have committed individuals to this, and just know that there's no victory lap or anything. There's no peace coming out of this decision. It's painful. Zero peace. But we'll continue our work and attempt to move this forward, and expect this to be the first test of our reform and all these types of things, but we accept it. That's a challenge we accept, to continue work on reform. All right. Thank you. At this time, due to the long duration of comments, we're going to take a 10-minute break. All right, welcome back. Up next, item 2.4, City Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mayor. No report this evening.
Item 2.5, City Attorney's Report.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report this evening.
Next up, Consent Agenda.
Thank you. We have the following items on the consent agenda for council's consideration. Item 3.1, approve the following appointments or reappointments to boards or commissions. A, Chelsea Denull to the Planning Commission for a full term ending December 31st, 2025. B, Helena Nelson to the Commission on the Environment for a partial term ending December 31st, 2024. C, Parker Fisher to the Housing Commission for a partial term ending December 31st, 2022. Item 3.2 was moved to the business agenda. Item 3.3, approve a resolution to establish September 20th, 2022 as National Voter Registration Day. Item 3.4, approve the city's annual Pollinator Friendly Community Resolution. Item 3.5, approve a resolution canceling regular city council meetings scheduled for November 22nd, 2022 and December 20th, 2022. Item 3.6, approve a resolution to amend the Downtown Development Bond Series 2015 agreement with Huntington Bank related to the Evergreen Properties variable rate structure to replace the expiring index with a comparable index. Item 3.7, approve a contract with pricing procured through the purchasing consortium Omnia Partners with VDA for elevator design, engineering, and consulting services related to the Charles Parking Garage elevators replacement in the amount of $25,368.60 and authorize the city manager to sign. In addition, approve a 20% contingency for this contract. Item 3.8 was moved to the business agenda. Those are all the items on the consent agenda for council's consideration.
For a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to item 4.1, consideration of Humana Medicare Advantage 2023 insurance. On this subject, I'll be recusing myself from discussion and direct discussion of health or health insurance due to my association with healthcare and health insurance. Is that the good time to put it?
I think you need to take a vote, Mayor, and ask for support, and then motion, and then a vote.
What's my next step?
Well,
I'll look for a motion.
I'll move recusal of Mayor Bacon for his stated reasons.
Second.
And I guess I will call the vote on that since he's been since he's can't vote on himself. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You are recused, Mr. Bacon.
Thank you.
So I guess, should I then take over this? Okay. I think we just pulled this off the consent agenda really to do that recusal of the mayor. Mr. Lohanis, do you want to just kind of summarize this for us?
So Humana Medicare Advantage is our insurance for retirees for the 65 and over retirees. This is a renewal from prior years. We've been with Humana for many years. This has no increase from the prior year, so it is a flat rate, and we are recommending approval.
Excellent. Is there any discussion before we look for a motion?
I have a question. Sure. So, George, is this something that's ran past the retirees or, like a group that it's impacted by?
So this is a portion of, it's looked at through our healthcare task force on an annual basis, and they look at renewals overall. Like I said, this is, we've been with Humana Medicare Advantage now for, I believe, over a dozen years, perhaps longer. So it's the same plan, same structure, and so it is no change, and it's essentially the same rate as well.
Councilmember Babcock?
Thank you. Was this the change that drew the attention of some of the police retirees?
So what we were looking at there was making changes to existing retirees. So that was, these are the same groups of people, but there's more retirees. the whole union of, the whole set of retirees includes people who are 50, 55, up to 65. Those people are covered by our current health insurance provider, McLaren, because they're insured with actives. These are the 65-plus retirees. So they could have been impacted by changes. What we would have done, what we're looking to do was potentially have people have the same insurance as our actives. So they could have been impacted.
Well, you'll recall we received several emails from retired members of the police department, and I guess they emailed us, it's public record, but I kind of avoid reading their names into the public. I guess I could, but I believe you were to meet with them. They had concerns because their copay was going to increase. Is this the same group of people, or is that group of people included in this plan?
So there are no changes, so we decided not to make the changes. We looked at those changes, but elected not to make the changes at that time. So there are no changes related to co-pays and co-shares at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, I'll look for a motion on this item. I guess I'll move approval, and then I just need a second.
Okay, I'm sorry, what?
We need to-
I can read it. Should I read it?
We just need so I'll move approval of the consideration of the Humana Medicare Advantage 2023 insurance renewal, and then I need a second before we can vote on it.
Okay, I'll move it. Okay, second, sorry.
No, all good.
Okay. It's the
All
mic, I
right,
can't
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Next up, item 4.2, discussion of concept of utilizing public spaces downtown to support local business and provide opportunities for emerging business to access downtown foot traffic while also activating public spaces, public places.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Tom Fehrenbach. I'm the Director of Planning, Building, and Development for the city. Here in front of you tonight with a concept for your consideration and see if it's something that Council desires to move forward with, known as basically a pilot project using the Albert Alcove working title. So, yes. So essentially, the kind of concept before Council is to utilize public spaces in a way that kind of has the double-edged purpose of both supporting existing businesses, providing a space that allows some of our regional entrepreneurs to access our market and activates spaces. So that's really the policy question in front of you tonight. And we would do that by utilizing public spaces for these pop-up purposes, for product sales, retail sales, and other activation events that support, again, the local merchants, but also provide the spaces for the emerging entrepreneurs in the region. So the way we would pilot this is through the use of the space underneath the Division Garage along Albert Avenue. It's desirable for several reasons, one of which we already have the food truck program approved. That would be an added sort of benefit for entrepreneurship and also help to activate this area. Essentially, we would make this space under certain circumstances available to those folks to display their products and have sales under certain conditions, which we would need to bring back to Council as part of a program if you're interested in moving forward. And then there are a number of considerations that are going to be part of our recommendation if Council wants us to move forward. This is not an exhaustive list, but it goes to show you, many of the things that we as staff consider when making a recommendation, such as public safety, the opportunities for partnering with organizations that are supporting emerging entrepreneurs in this space or supporting our downtown district. Certainly we have some within our city framework as well. Obviously, staffing resources and constraints are always part of the consideration. We have many competing demands for those resources. Providing access that is equitable to this program is I think one of the attributes that we'll need to really consider carefully. Accessibility, and then some of the sort of logistical things such as restroom facilities, how waste is going to be managed, power, equipment, and ultimately the other things kind of going on in the city, given the time, weather, et cetera, and then parking. So that's, again, not an exhaustive list, but gives you sort of some of the perspective of some of the things we'll be considering. If you decide this is a good concept to explore further, the next steps would really be, after this discussion tonight, developing this program. We want to engage with our potential partners, also engage with some of the people we think might use this space to see if it, is desirable. And we'd like to get some input from our Downtown Development Authority and Downtown Management Board. So with that, I'd be happy to take your perspective, answer any questions you might have. We also have Mr. Cummins here, our Community and Economic Development Administrator, and we're happy to take any questions that you have.
I always dominate these discussions, so I'm going to make sure that the rest of council has a chance to talk before I blather at you, but not surprisingly, I've got lots of questions. For the program application, so do you see us charging people to do this?
I would think we'd want to have cost recovery would be our perspective. So some nominal fee that covers whatever the staff, the staffing administrative function would be.
And would you see the person that wants to have a space, would they do it for a month, or would they do it for like a couple days, or how would that go?
That's definitely one of the things that has not been really fleshed out at this point. My instinct would be to allow enough time so that people could access the market for a long enough period to really test the market, but not so long that it prevents numerous other people from also having the access. Similarly, our initial thoughts were to have groups of people, groups of merchants, groups of entrepreneurs that could apply as a group, and therefore, kind of spread the availability over some group. We still need to kind of evaluate how large of a group can really be accommodated. The space is larger than one might think, but it's obviously not unlimited.
Fees are you foreseeing as part of this project?
Yeah, again, I think it would
Program.
be nominal. Probably in the $50 range, I would imagine. But we'd try to base it on what the actual administrative function would be. So that's kind of dependent on the complexity of the application. We'd of course strive to make it as simple as possible. This is a pilot program. Our goal would be to learn from this, to cover as many of the sort of public safety and critical bases as possible, but leave some room for learning that we could apply. Ultimately, our hope is, if this works, we could expand it to other public places as well.
Okay. Would you require any kind of insurance policy?
Yeah, I think we typically would require kind of the standard insurance policy.
Which is?
I believe it's $1 million.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And to whom would the prospective vendors apply? Who would have final say over this?
The city in some way, shape, or form. I think what we would come back with is likely a policy that's approved by the council that allows the city manager to approve these under certain circumstances, would probably be my estimation.
Thank you.
I think from my perspective, as we move forward with these types of activities, kind of the food trucks were my pilot, and I just, I know kind of how we do this here. When everything goes kind of to die, death of 1,000 cuts in East Lansing and doesn't ever really find a home. I just don't really, I'm not that excited about it. I'm excited about the activation. It's not going to be an alternative to any of the other stuff that we're pushing for. And I just hope that's not the energy, or, if there's not a ton of support for this type of activation that is not just kind of done so poorly, is the only word I can put in there, in a way that no one will use it. That's the tricky part. And how are we going to market it? Are we going to, what's the interface with the customers who'd want to use this space and that kind of thing? Or is it something we set up and then walk away from, and then no one knows that part of it? I think that's a tricky part with all this, because we've done, we went through all the rigmarole with food trucks, and we've done really nothing with food trucks at this point. And I don't think most people are excited by our food truck process. So when you said, planning to George to this, that, and that is not exciting as far as the ability to really activate this. So just know that I'm curious for these types of activations, but also that the process is simple enough. We can get this stuff down to one-pagers and things like that, where it's not so intricate that a small entrepreneur, someone's not totally wiped out attempting to use or activate the space. That doesn't make any sense. We have enough of those processes already. So you're up.
Well, first of all, I'm really excited that we're talking about it, because I think that this is something that could really open up East Lansing as a market to some people. We were just at DMB today actually talking about the kind of the trick of attracting retail type businesses to downtown. We seem to be having no problem filling up our restaurant storefronts, but the boutique style retail is really hard to get into our market. Partially because of our rents are quite a threshold to that. So opening up a really approachable, hopefully streamlined process to invite those businesses into our area and show them that they've got a market here is really exciting. I'm glad that we're talking about it. I'm wondering, I know we're envisioning this as a pilot, and so I don't want to, get too nitpicky on the details yet, because I know the real work hasn't been done. I'm remembering last summer, though, and the public infrastructure that was down in that Albert alcove, and we just did not get the kind of public engagement there that we got on the Alfresco Plaza. And I think it's partially because the types of businesses that are adjacent down there. There's a barbershop and a tanning salon, right? And so, one of the things that brings the energy to Alfresco is proximity to restaurants. And so I'm wondering if we could also explore, or perhaps maybe this is phase 2, the Marriott Plaza area that's just a little bit closer to recreational amenities, I'd say. I've always thought we should have a coffee cart underneath that little plaza for the Michigan Flyer people, right? They would sell 1 million cappuccinos. But so I'm wondering if you could maybe explore that as an option too. I guess it would be kind of interesting to me to play them side by side and see which area was most attractive to people coming in, and then that we could add that to our interest. I think a streamlined process that kind of essentially what we do with our zoning, right? You can do this here, and then it's an administrative approval, right? So there's no picking and choosing. It's just if you meet our applicable criteria, then you're approved, right? So that there's no bias and there's no, kind of favoritism, I guess. And then I also just want to stress to you guys as you're envisioning the process, that people who are engaged in retail entrepreneurship are a very motley crew, and they tend to not do well with complicated processes. So getting through the state tax filing system is about maxed most of us out. So if it's a complicated application, you're probably going to weed out some people right at the beginning. So I think mirroring Mr. Bacon's comments that we should make it as streamlined as possible would be good. And then there's a huge, resource in our area for creative people, and I that consider myself to be pretty tied into that group. I'm finding new opportunities every day, just because people have a really difficult time getting the word out. So if we're going to do it, we've got to really promote it and really make sure that people know, that we're here, that we want them here, that will help them, to just, because otherwise I think it's unfortunately going to fizzle, which is kind of I think what's happened with food trucks. We just sort of, it took us so long to get to the punch that our momentum was kind of gone by the time we got it approved. I'm hoping that next season, with it all already in place, that we'll see a little bit more traction there. But anyway, mostly that was a really long way to say, can we add a second place as well, even though it's just a pilot? And my preferred one would be that Marriott Plaza. So anyway.
Is there like a specific place of the Marriott Plaza?
Well, there's that open area behind that's kind of flexible, but then that whole covered area right outside the restaurant and the salon there, I think it offers some of the weather protection that we get in that Albert area too, to have the covered area, because it makes it so people can go kind of rain or shine. So.
One of the thoughts also was that perhaps we could have, this is an expandable program where we have applied for a grant, a significant grant to expand our farmers market and put a large pavilion area. That's something that could have a similar program or the same program where you could have, like the festival you're talking about with Fiber and Fashion, where it's creators who are actually making stuff. So instead of homegrown Michigan produce, it's homemade crafts, it's homemade clothing, it's homemade art, or it's art that people are selling. So on different nights of the week, you could have lots of opportunities for people to do selling, small format, and it's really promoting entrepreneurship. And it's the similar program.
Yeah,
so I think
not
it's
to
something
hold
that can be
myself
repeated.
up as an example, but that's exactly what I did when I was getting into art. Before I did art fairs, Ann Arbor has an art market in their Carytown market the day after their farmers market. That's been going for decades. And so that Sunday market was my first public art selling. And then from that, I did the East Lansing Art Fair and other art festivals. So I think absolutely 100%. I think that's going to be a very exciting venue.
Yeah, and I think to hear as well from the community development team gets out and kind of gets a feel for if the appetite for this type of thing as well. So we're not launching something that there's no appetite for. I think that'd be important.
I've got some partners I can put you in touch with too.
Yeah, so just that we test the marketplace before we move forward. Other than that, it's worth looking into, for that part of it.
Yeah.
From that perspective.
May I make a remark? I like how it sounds too, and I just like the idea that sometimes it's difficult to afford to have space in the city of East Lansing as a business person. But I'm curious about the question about the $1 million insurance, or what's it called?
Liability insurance?
I'm sorry.
Liability insurance?
Liability insurance. I'm just going to want to know that the group we're targeting, that's the, amounts that they have, and that we're not asking for something that doesn't really exist just to, CYA.
Yeah, it really will depend on if they only have a small space where they're selling some trinkets or custom art, whatever they're doing. That's not going to require a threshold like that. So we'll just have to see how the spaces kind of evolve.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, in our efforts to streamline and simplify the process, we might be able to find some economies of scale and get some assistance from, our internal partners in the DDA and DMB, and then also potentially some external partners who may help with all of that. So that's definitely something we'll look into.
Thanks.
I'll just say 1 page. That's the amount of paperwork.
You didn't say how large, though.
1 page. 1 page regular print.
2 pages are fine.
Yeah.
2 pages might be better.
Maybe.
Don't lawyer this, Lisa.
So we're just moving to continue researching on this.
Do we have to give an approval or just?
No, I think we have enough to, we'll move forward and do the research, and we'll bring back to council either, whatever the results of our recommendation are.
So that next item is item 4.3, discussion of draft resolutions to allow street closure for business support activities.
So this is one I can just jump in on. This came about basically from the prior discussion where we were looking for alternatives. Mayor mentioned about the opportunity for businesses to come forward and have an opportunity to close the street for promotional or event-type activities. I asked the city attorney to draft up some resolutions that effectuated that. I don't know if that meets with what council was looking for, but what we're looking for are ways that we can have a particular business take the steps necessary, close the street, and do all of that, where they're the responsible party. The other resolution is where the city is the responsible party and they compensate us for that. So basically, it's just two options that look at the same thing, which is a business closing the street for their own purposes, promotional purposes, selling, what have you. So I envision this as a sidewalk sale that extends out into the street, plus whatever they want to do. So that's what the resolutions are. I don't know if that meets with what council was looking for, but that's here for discussion, and we can take your direction and bring something back.
Well, I had some questions about how it had originated, but I will withhold until we learn more and it comes back, but that'll be fine. Thank you.
I'll just say the origination of this one was a request from the Division Street request, and then kind of a multiplier of some of the other stuff we've done before. I think until we have a policy in place as far as everyone having sole responsibility for how we close roads, that seems a little like a lot. Like I don't. Maybe I just disagreeing with the trouble of closing roads. If there was a massive pothole or a sinkhole or you had to reroute or do something like that, I understand there is capital expense to that. But if we're trying to partner and create viability for the businesses downtown and the expense of uprooting them and all the turnover and all those types of things, I think we need to be amendable to assisting them when they want to do activities that promote or frankly help them pay their rent to stay in their spot month to month. And I think some of this conversation that builds to my frustration with these types of things is we take these really long views, and I don't think as we're attracting entrepreneurs and other people to these spaces, they don't have long time to kind of sit around and debate, for us to make these decisions when they're trying to just stay capitalized and keep their businesses alive. And that's kind of been a bunch of the stuff that we've had to do lately around that, and even including some things with notice and those types of things. We put out these things have a lot of capital things tied to them, and we don't give enough time or things around the capital expenditure. So I think this is something we work on to, if we don't recover every single dollar of how we close a road or do something, there's secondary benefits to doing these types of things or events, or creating even stuff we've done around placemaking and foot traffic, and we just kind of view it more like that versus this total cost recovery things. I think we've benefited from just creating interest and having people in the downtown to do various things that are really difficult to quantify dollar for dollar for that kind of thing. So, and I struggle with these proposals a little bit, because we're getting to this point of everything's cost recovery and this, that, and the other, and particularly for our local businesses, we cost recover quite a bit from our local businesses. I think it's not a bad idea to sometimes partner with them and create some opportunities that are just because what we want for the downtown or outside the downtown from those businesses. So, and that's kind of my issue with all of this. I want it to be more kind of cooperative and creating that type of energy and faster around some of this stuff. So, but I'll digress.
You said it better than I could have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Comments? Questions?
I have a question about any costs for public safety shall be the responsibility of the requesting party. When do we charge people for costs for public safety?
So, do you mean public safety or for the closure of it in the ordinance?
It's in the resolution. It's the third condition under the final, therefore be it resolved. Number 3, any costs for public safety or other personnel arising out of the street closure shall be the responsibility of the requesting party. I think we have charged the art festival for police support before. That's the only one that comes to mind.
I'd have to look to the city attorney. Did you mean public safety in the terms of Public Works putting out barricading for public safety, or did you specifically mean public safety like police and fire personnel, or both?
Yeah, no, it was solely the public safety and public works costs associated with the traffic closure and rerouting of traffic as necessary.
So it wasn't for police officers standing on, it wasn't envisioned in that. It was envisioned in terms of the staff time to put out barricading and to pick up barricading and that plan. That was it. It wasn't involving police and fire personnel or anything like that.
So I think the pilot is specific examples for the October date. I think the individual who wanted to close that. So how would we close a street if we wanted to close a street? I think that's kind of how I'm viewing maybe I'm confused.
Yeah, so I think that we're looking at, if we look at a closure of a street in a neighborhood for a neighborhood block party, for instance, I think then because of the low traffic, the low speed, and the low intensity of it, putting out sawhorses or something like that, or a little sign that someone could drag out is acceptable. If you look at a downtown area where there's a lot more traffic flow coming off of a main street, then you would want to do a more robust closure with actual traffic control that tells people there's going to be a closure. You'd have proper barricading. You'd have a left turn lane coming off of Grand River that has to be coned and blocked off. And all of that has to be done safely when the road is still open. So it's a much different endeavor to close a street like that off of Grand River or in the downtown than you would with a neighborhood street, for instance, which has maybe one car going by every 20 minutes. So much different standards, more intensity of time, more intensity of planning, and more materials. And then if we do what we've been doing for our other events, which is putting actual hardened material so that no one can accidentally or purposefully drive through those enclosures, then we're at a much higher cost for concrete blocks or something like that that could stop a vehicle, because those are just people intensive and equipment intensive to move around. So that's the reasons for the cost.
Yeah,
And I would admit also that we're not particularly efficient on a Saturday of barricading, because our workforce is really designed for an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday with Public Works. And when you bring people back on a Saturday or Sunday, you're usually paying minimum hours of work and callback pay, and it may very well be that a private business would have a cheaper price getting a contractor to come do that than to have our own Public Works department do that with all of our requirements. So
Sure. So if we're closing for a weekend type thing, you close on a Friday and open on a Monday. What's hard to comprehend, well, let me contextualize this. Our entire downtown was closed for months on end. And we're trying to say it's difficult to close a portion of a city block or whatever the request is. That's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. Like, I get it, and there's costs associated with it, but we did a massive closing of our entire downtown. We can't do a small, singular outlays for our business associates and partners in the downtown. That doesn't make sense.
I think the difference is a public purpose versus a private purpose. The downtown closure is a public purpose for community space. If a single business says we want you to close for us, it's now a private purpose. So I think that's the difference, and I thought that the city has to be careful in how we spend money relating to private purposes.
Literally, the express secondary rationale for Albert Alfresco was promotion of the downtown and downtown businesses during the pandemic. It was to help support them, create outside space. It was literally part of why we were doing, this is an extension of that placemaking. And the fact that we're kind of getting wrapped around ourselves here, this is all, so the other proposal, it's all one thing. Are we going to be partners and activate the spaces and do the things, or are we going to nitpick every time someone asks us to do something or figure out a solution to do it? It's the spirit of the thing here. We literally had the downtown closed for months. We can't close for a few hours, or if it ends up being the weekend, we reroute people. Half of the state's tore up right now with redirection, and this doesn't register. And I'm not really representing, I don't have a business downtown, but think of the read you're giving to the downtown businesses and the people where they're cutting ribbons and doing this and all this other stuff. We're not there anymore after to support promoting or doing the things that doesn't make any sense. It's not a good partner. So take that back to the lab and get us something to help us better partner with the business people. Because we're totally happy to be there on day one to cut ribbons, but we're not there. And like, all right, that's not the way. That's not how we're going to fill up the downtown or any other parts of the city with business and be attractive and say we're good partners. It's not. It's unacceptable. So.
And if I may, this is not the first time by any stretch that someone has asked to close public streets for a private business or for a smaller sort of event. I mean, these go back, I can tell you these go back in East Lansing to the 80s. And there's never been a policy, and now there's a policy that seems to have come up in short order.
We're going to close parts for the Halloween things and all the other things we do, correct?
There was some discussion in DMB about possibly trying to close off part of Albert for Great Pumpkin Walk and the Safe Halloween on MIC usually closes for at least part of the afternoon because I think they put up like bounce houses and stuff like that. Yeah. So just to kind of reframe this discussion, which I do, I like the idea. I mean, I consider our businesses to be a type of resident of our city. There are business residents, right? They give us their trust and they invest in our community similar to the way that our residents invest in their houses and, give us their passion. So I do think the downtown businesses, all of the businesses in town are due the same kind of loyalty from us that we give to our home-owning residents, which includes, enthusiasm when they come to us with exciting ideas. I understand where Mr. Lahanas is coming from because you are, the risk manager of our city. That's why you're the manager, and we're the upstarts. Sorry that we're stressful to work with sometimes, Mr. Lahanas. So I think, I'd like to find kind of a balance that provides a reasonable amount of risk assessment or risk mitigation to the city while also giving us the opportunity to embrace our businesses when they come forward with exciting ideas. And I think, I'm thinking of businesses that are like on the 500 block alley, and it's much easier for them to host these kind of events because they're not, on a street that's directly adjacent to an MDOT highway, right? So by virtue of their location, they have more opportunities, and that's just kind of the reality of renting space, right? So there's going to be some spaces that are easier for us to accommodate than others, which is going to make it very difficult for us to craft a completely unified policy that will say, here's exactly what you do in every single case. But I do think that we should come at this with a spirit of yes, as opposed to a spirit of making sure that we're protected in every single eventuality down to the 100% level. I think, and I don't know what that means, but I think the discussion from this council just on this table is thinking that these two resolutions before us are a little too far up one side of the spectrum. I'm not sure if anybody's got a possible edit or back to the drawing board, or I don't know how we can get this passed in order to accommodate the business that's interested in doing something in October. I guess I'm bumping that back to you, Mr.
There's time to give direction and then bring it back to council for the meeting on the 20th. So we certainly can take the council's direction and bring it back for that meeting.
And I think that October came from Vintage and the other store on Division. There's two stores that was first said that need everyone to agree. There's two of them, they agree. So that wasn't that hard. So they're under the old provision. Like, this has nothing to do with, so that's up to Adam's team or whoever works directly with the business. We need to get October 1 figured out. Whatever we're doing for the future, if this comes up in the future, then we need to figure that out. It needs to be less cumbersome than.
Yeah, I think, and
maybe we partner on this. We don't make it
Yeah. I don't see, I know there's been some concern about, having street closures downtown willy-nilly and all the time. But I'll tell you, as somebody that's hosted a large event downtown, it's a lot of work to put it together, and I don't see every business leaping forward to close streets every single week. But we could do something like one a month, first come, first serves kind of thing, to kind of protect us from just willy-nilly requests. I would definitely say, not on home game weekends and other times that we anticipate high traffic, and I think we can protect ourselves in some of those ways. And then, in terms of the cost and the cost recovery, I think we should come up with a fee that is, rather than the, I don't know, I guess most businesses are holding some sort of liability insurance, so we can find out if that coverage is sufficient, and they just need to add the party as a named insured. That's actually not that difficult. And then in terms of the barricading, I think we just set a fee, and I think we set a fee that offsets some of our costs. I think we're going to have to, I think we might want to look at barricading that's less something between the sawhorse and the giant concrete blocks that need a crane to move them. I'm thinking about I know that it was supplied by the construction company, but when we did the Albert Avenue lane closure, it was orange plastic barricades that I think might have been filled with water. So, maybe there's something like that is a little bit easier to move. I know I've done the block party, so I know the sawhorse routine, and whereas some of the internal streets downtown that might feel secure, it does seem a little flimsy for right off of Grand River, so I feel that. But maybe there's something between the concrete barricade and the sawhorse that we could explore that would be a little bit more affordable. I don't know. You think, are we getting closer?
Yeah, we can figure it out. Just that the spirit's to figure it out, not to make it so crappy that we don't do it. Like, that's just kind of, I'm trying to get away from that. It's just kind of, I feel like that's, yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah, you can go ahead and finish it. I started thinking about how Tom mentioned a pilot. Maybe the person that needs it for October can be our pilot, and then we can just talk about lessons learned from that. I am interested going forward, if we consider something like this, what times have we not, again, charged? For example, I thought about the ISO 5K. Did they come out of pocket for the closures?
So typically, it depends if the city's a sponsor or not, and even if the city is a sponsor, for instance, the Art Festival pays a portion for Public Works barricading and staffing. They pay, I think, a $10,000 charge for the festival for a pretty intensive staffing that we have to do, regime that we have to do. It's not all uncommon. City of Ann Arbor pays full cost recovery, their festival pays full cost recovery for the services they use from the city. And it really is, it's also an accounting function because you're showing the true costs of a festival in that cost center.
But
so
my question was the ISO.
Yeah, ISO was sponsored by the city. So did they pay for the barricading? They hired a company to do that separately. So they paid and hired a barricading company, which I think they found is, like I said, is probably more cost effective than us doing it for them.
Okay.
And there are reputable companies that know the standards and come up with a plan, and then they put the barricades up and they pick them back up again.
Okay. And my other question was, you mentioned some staff aren't on the clock on the weekends. I would like to know what the damage is money-wise for the staff that you said aren't on the clock on the weekends. And I also wonder if you guys have the other job duties as assigned in your job descriptions, and then I think about who is on the clock on Saturdays and Sundays, and can they help?
So this would be a plan by Public Works Engineering if we were going to do it for a road closure, and then it would be Public Works staff who are trained in traffic control and placing these barricades. They would put it. So to give you a rough estimate, if you were to put concrete blocks, the hardened situation, picking it up and dropping it off on the same day on a Saturday would probably be $3,000. If you were to not use concrete and just use barricading, it'd probably be half that amount, maybe $1,500. So that's a comparison that a business could take to a private and see if they could do it better than that, which the city of East Lansing, I'm saying again, I'm not saying our workforce is inefficient at all, but we're not made for Saturday and Sunday work in particular because our employees work Monday through Friday and people want to enjoy their time off. So if you call someone in, there are minimum callbacks for that person. They won't come in and work for an hour. It's usually a 3-hour minimum callback, essentially to make it worth their while. So I'm not advocating that someone should use us. It doesn't make us money. It's not a great way to do it. I think that someone using private barricading is probably a much better way to do this than using the city of East Lansing to do it on a Saturday.
Yeah, I think you're losing me again. We can close roads kind of whenever, though, that we want, and it's kind of all baked into the cake. If we wanted to close the road on Friday, we're East Lansing, and open it back up on Monday, we could do that. The October 1 date's an away game date for that. That feels like kind of a straw. You're telling me like we can't close roads.
Yeah, we close roads, but it's a cost center. So Public Works has a work order system where they bill all of that out. So what we're saying is that Public Works somehow has to eat that, and I don't know what that means. So it means that the state trunk line, the state road tax is paying for the closure of a street. So if it's the art festival, it's the art festival paying for it. If it's the jazz festival, it's the jazz festival paying for it. We can close streets, but it depends on the purpose. Perhaps our Director McPherson could talk better about it and not so ineloquently as I am, but all of these things get billed to somebody because there's a work order system. So when Public Works employees go do a job, it's charged to a separate account as a fund. And in this situation, if it's a road closure because there's a damage to the road of a pothole, that's rightly charged to the city's road fund. If it's closing it for an art festival, it's rightly charged to the art festival. Nicole, do you want to give a better explanation if there's one that exists?
No, that's a pretty good summary in regards to that. So we get Act 51 money for our roads from the state, and that's what we utilize our traffic control. That's what the cost center would be charged to, would be that traffic control component of our Act 51 money. Now, we don't typically use, Act 51 money for private entities, and I think that's what George was alluding to initially. So we have cost centers. So we could charge DDA, we could charge, we charge the art festival, we charge things for what we do on the streets.
Okay, good. What I'm arguing, it's not a private event. We're in partnership with everyone that's literally the reason for Al Fresco. I remember the debates around this was activation, getting people outside, so it's like a straw man. You're running me around in a circle here. The argument is that's part of the partnership that we're doing, because we've done it, and I don't want to blow this out of proportion, but you're giving me that doesn't make any sense. If we're offering this as, all right, we want to enhance downtown business or do X, Y, Z, that's what we're doing. That's what I'm not understanding. It's part of that, not.
We can bring it back without cost, and then, we can bring various iterations back, and council can pass what you will. This is a decision for council to make, what level of barricading you want, where you want the cost ascribed to. It's all council's decision, so we'll bring what council wants to see. We're just laying out some of the challenges.
I'm really trying to beat back the spirit of it, because anything else that wants a contingency or wants whatever, it's baked in and it's thrown into the equation. And it seems like if it's serving something else, it has every penny's accounted for, but everything else is kind of like, well, it's going to have these overruns, possibly this, that, and the other. There's a little bit of, you got to do some self-reflection here and say, we want to help, we want to expand these things. We're doing that's the real purpose of part of what Al Fresco was, correct? Wasn't just.
But we also, we do have a true cost accounting system. If you look at our audit, I don't know where the budget from Al Fresco was accounted for. I'd have to look at it, but I think some of that money came from DDA, didn't it? I don't know. I don't remember.
A significant contribution in the past. It came from a grant for a lot of the items, and for staff time of it was from one of the COVID grants. Adam, looking at you to see if you have an answer for me on that, where the first year.
Yeah, in 2021, it came from the
So I think, if we want to make a program like this available, and I think, if we're making the argument that it's public, I think that this situation before us on Division Street has made a good faith effort by engaging every single business on their block, which happens to be 2, which is a pretty, low bar. So, that could be a condition that you can close the street as long as every vendor on, the facing the closed portion has been invited to participate, I guess. But then, we might, if we want to do this and make it an actual program, what we might have to do is create a fund, either from our DMB or our DDA, that is essentially a, street festival activation fund that has some amount of money in it that can kind of be a place where some of this goes. We've already passed our budget this year, so we'd have to figure out that. But I think we do, we can't just write off expenses because that's not the kind of body we are. We have to account for them in some way. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. I think we can do it. We just have to figure out where we're going to put it.
So on item 4.3, can we send this back, or what do we do with this?
We can bring it back with further revisions on September 20th for council.
Do we need a motion for that, Tony?
No,
Okay.
we have enough direction, I think.
All right, thank you. I think this might be Tom, too. Here, staying put. Item 3.8, new item 4.4. Introduce and refer to the Planning Commission a request for conditional rezoning of an unaddressed property on West Road, parcel 23-20-01-02-226-021 from B5 Community Retail Sales Business District to M1 Manufacturing District. And this was my request only just because we had some people and we're involved in this from LEAP and the chamber and other people in that zone, so I just wanted to put something on the record, just an explanation. I had already read the.
Great, yeah, so this is just introducing, referring to the Planning Commission, a rezoning for the property that is adjacent to the 3400 West property, where Ata Steo is going to be taking over that building, and was the subject of a PA 328 tax abatement that the council approved a few months ago. The existing tenant wants to move their operation, which includes a real estate headquarters, real estate sales headquarters and management headquarters, as well as an industrial use, which is related to their automotive racing business. And so they're essentially wanting to relocate next door to make room for Attesteo, and this would be the first in a series of approvals that would be necessary to do that. So they are requesting a conditional rezoning, essentially to allow the same type of use that they are operating now, and reducing some of what might be available in the M1 zoning district. So this is, again, a referral to the Planning Commission, and would ultimately get a recommendation from them and then come back for a public hearing at the council level.
Any questions? All right.
Since we pulled it off, do we have to vote on it?
Yeah.
I can read it.
Thank you.
Please. Motion to introduce the rezoning of parcel 33-20-01-02-226-021 from B5 to M1 and transmit to the Planning Commission for a public hearing and recommendation.
Second. Any discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion 4.4 carries. Next up, item 4.5, formerly item 3.2, approval of the reappointment of Heather Pope to the Capital Area Community Service Board.
Thank you. I pulled this off the consent agenda because I want to adjourn this to a date certain 2 weeks from now. I would like to ask Ms. Pope if this is something near and dear to her heart, in which case I have no objections to reappointing her. However, as I looked at the Capital Area Community Services Board and what it does, its role doesn't seem to be well placed in the planning department. And as we think about the expansion and the various roles of the planning department, it may be worth questioning whether this should be placed, whether this assignment should be staffed by someone in a different department. So I'd just like time to speak with Ms. Pope, and if this is what she lives to do, I certainly will not get in her way. But I do think there's a question about whether, for instance, food programs, financial assistance, housing, actually belongs in planning.
She was a staff person to Community Development Block Grant for an extended period and worked in human services type programs. So I think she's had about 22 years working with the organization. But really, it's a decision for council to not have necessarily the discussion with staff people, but to decide if a council person wants to do it, and if not, then you're really delegating it to us, and then we could find the best person. But the question we proposed to council early on, about 2 weeks ago, was, did anyone from council have an interest in taking this back from staff? Because staff doesn't have a need to fill in that position, so anyone from council could really take that role over. But obviously, we'd prefer to be able to allocate staff based on our own allocation of who's available and who has the abilities to do that and the time to do that.
I move that we adjourn this item, date certain, for September 20th.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. And meeting adjourned.